Sorry, good. Morning, I'd like to declare the meeting open and welcome councillors and team members who are in attendance to the Finance and Services meeting of the 21st of February 2024. I'd like to ask Janine if you could do the karakia tematanga for us. Start the meeting, please.
Certainly. Morning, everyone. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai, he hiaki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora.
Thank you, Janine. The meeting agenda has been circulated prior to the meeting. I'd just like to note that we have a guest arriving at approximately 10 o'clock, John Horrell from the investment advisory firm. And if it's appropriate, I'd like to change item 10 to fit in wherever we've got a gap so that we can allow John to get away because he's travelling back to Auckland. So just notifying that now. So I'd like to move the agenda be approved. Thanks. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Right, the first item is report to Finance Service Committee for information. It's matters arising from the previous meeting. I'll send over to Janine. Oh, sorry. Apologies. I think Angela Strange is an apology.
Got a bit of echo happening.
Fingers crossed. I don't know what that is about.
So do we need to backtrack? No. Okay, so apologies. Sorry. Apologies. Councillor Strange for absence be accepted.
And sorry, Mr. Chair, depending on our time frame as we move through the agenda, I may be an early departure.
Thank you. Councillor Story. So, thanks. Second. Favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Carried. Right, we'll move matters arising from previous meetings now, Janine, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just the one matter that's noted in here that is still to action in relation to Council's disaster recovery reserves, the trends and the history of transfers from those reserves over time. We'll make sure that that information is available for the next committee meeting. I think this is a really important area. It's one that was highlighted through our long-term plan discussions in terms of the way that we're currently providing for this disaster recovery and the need to do some further work around other options, self-insurance models and the like over the next couple of years through into the next LTP. But we will report back on this at the next meeting for you.
Okay. Thanks, Janine. Has anybody got any questions of Janine on that? If not, the resolution is that the matters arising from previous meeting, Finance Service Committee 21 February, be received. Thank you, Pamela. And Mikhail, second. All in favour? Carried. So next item on the agenda. TR Tupu update. Okay, Emma's going to do a presentation with Neville. Are you involved, Neville? Okay. Welcome. Thank you, Emma. The floor is yours.
Start again. I'm just going to share the dashboard live that we can all see that. Good.
While Emma's getting the dashboard up, I'll just preface the section with a couple of comments. One is that we're going to focus on the dashboard primarily today. You'll see in the report a reference to the culture results and the pulse survey. those were covered, in my opinion, from feedback I've received at least, very thoroughly at the CERC meeting recently. So there's probably no need to dive into any great detail, just noting that the OCI, the Organisational Culture Index survey, is coming up very soon, and we're focused on preparing for that. We also talked at the CE Councillor catch-up this week about the council mark, or now the Te Korowai assessment that's recently been completed, and we're still working through that, and met yesterday as ELT with the representatives from Council Mark to have a bit of a deep dive, and there's further deep dives to occur over the coming weeks. And as you'll see in the report, we're planning to bring that plan back at the next Finance and Services meeting. So those were just the comments I wish to make. Over to you, Emma.
Thanks, Neil.
Right, so looking at our dashboard today, we can obviously see that our culture area is a little low on the on-track measures. We'll just look a little bit deeper. I'm going to just bypass through all of the orange ones at the top, are the ones that relate to the pulse. So we'll just head down to ones below that. So we've got annual leave balances here. And I just want to point out that despite we're not on track, or it's showing us still off track, we're actually trending downwards, and we're the lowest. We have the lowest number of people with over 240 days leave that we've had in the last 6 months, or in fact since the dashboard has been operating. So that's actually really positive in that space. And just wanted to point out also that our L&D management essentials are still tracking above the 50%. So that's the leadership modules that staff and managers can do online. So we'll move across to our customer area if we don't have any further comments on our culture issues. So in our customer area, we are tracking really well with our Net Promoter Scores. So that's the scores that our customers are giving us in their feedback. I also, in the report, went over the digital channels and how that is not an accurate reflection of what is actually going on in this area. We're getting upwards of 90,000 visits on our pages, and we've had 2 feedback, both of them negative, and that's really showing us performing quite negatively on our dashboard. So we do have the comms team who is doing some research into a measure that's just going to be a little bit more accurate and reflective of our work in this area. They're talking with Northland and Greater Wellington District Council to just see what they're doing and what experience they've had in this space. Also, with our IRIS response rates, we are in an upwards trend, tracking towards our 85% target in that area. And this has been as a result of a fairly large effort across our customer space and our SPI and ICM teams to understand how IRIS works and how the response rate is affecting the performance. So just making sure that they are responding to customers and closing off the requests in IRIS as they come through. So this is really good. And of course, our complaints are low and tracking really well. Are there any questions in the customer space about our performance here?
Just a couple of observations. Firstly, the leave balance, that's a really positive trend, and it's a significant move from where it was, 18 months ago?
Yeah.
So that's, I'd like to thank those involved in the work they've done. Time to fill spaces, that's surprising, but I guess it's just a signal of what the market's like at the present time. And just a suggestion on IRIS, how do we communicate to customers how they can access the system? Because I've spoken to people outside and most don't know about it. And I know you probably put your best efforts into communicating it to people, but I just like to better understand how we do actually let people know that there is a facility where they can actually log issues with the regional council.
So when a customer goes onto our website and they want to contact us, those contact forms generally go through Iris and put a request to Iris. So any time that a customer's put in or requesting something through our websites, it's going through to Iris. If a customer's coming to our front desk, our customer service staff will be doing the inputting themselves into Iris to ensure that a response is generated, request is generated in Iris. So our customers themselves won't realize that they are putting requests through into Iris specifically, but that is the back end of what's happening there.
So, for example, if Robbie wants to log an issue with the service delivery in his area, and I know it's not a very good example, but there are other people out there. They can actually go in and fill in a form which will get recorded.
Yes, correct.
So,
Yep.
so I just wonder how well that ability is known to our ratepayers, and whether we
Yeah,
should
that's
be
good.
doing something more proactively to communicate that to them. Whether it's possible to send people read their rates notices, whether we should be doing something with that, just on a regular basis to remind them that the facility is available.
Yeah, we actually also have an app as well that people can take photos and send issues through to us as well that we will respond to. So yeah, I'll take that point forward and talk to the comms team about that.
Thanks, Emma. Now, anybody, Stu?
So just further to that Crystal's one then, so if I do a similar sort of as to one Crystal described with Robbie, but I do it verbally over the phone to a staff member, that may not get recorded, or do staff tend to record those as well?
Yes, they will be recorded by the staff and they will go into the system.
Thank you.
Yeah, it depends on what it is, if it's a complaint or if it's a different kind of issues.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, so any other questions for Emma or Neville? If not, we did have a resolution of. Sorry, Robbie's.
Wait. So we'll just look at the innovation area quickly.
Sorry, yep. Robbie's got a question, I think.
Oh, you had a question, sorry.
When it's more on the ringing in for concerns.
Yep.
I've done it twice now. And when I've said I'm Councillor Cookson and I'm asking for this thing, they have no damn even idea who I am. So I've got real issues with that. They just think I'm just some radical person ringing up, asking for information, and I really have concerns that if I ring up and say it's Councillor Cookson here, I've got concerns and I need this sorted, something is done about it.
Yeah.
And seriously, it's happened to me twice now that I'm ringing up and it's a joke.
Yeah, acknowledge that during work hours, we have our staff obviously answering the phones. After hours, we do have.
This is during work hours.
So it is during.
Yeah,
hours.
and I was woken up and one was over pest control, and I said, it's Councillor Cookson here. I need to know who's in charge of this division. Please, can you, and then it took 5 minutes and then I didn't get anything. So, and that's happened several times. So I'm just confused of what's going on there. Is that system actually even working correctly, or is it, I know you're supposed to, some have said too, you're better off going online and you most probably get somewhere better, but definitely I've not had good luck on the phone.
Look, that's really disappointing to hear, Councillor, and it's certainly not the level of service that we're striving to provide. We definitely can do some more work around ensuring that councillors' profiles are front and centre of the omni-channel, which is the new system that council gratefully, from our perspective, funded in the annual plan. So that system is pretty much 90% operational now, and it provides functionality in there that should be able to pop up who our
But
callers are.
my mobile phone should just pop up on council and
Mm.
say it's councillor Cookson here.
Yeah, so
Bang.
look, honestly, we can do some work on that and try and solve that puzzle. I think the technology exists and I think it's just making the system work. But definitely you shouldn't get any lesser level of service than anybody else. And I'm disappointed to hear that. But what we'll be endeavouring to do is make sure that everything works faster and smoother and that you get connected with the person and the information that you're seeking at the first opportunity. Now, not every time will you get to a subject matter expert straight away, because they are rare and
No,
few
I
and far
understand that.
between. But what we're looking for is to ensure that you understand quite clearly that your issue has been heard and that it will be resolved in the fastest time possible. So that's our goal. And so, yeah, like I say, very disappointed. And on behalf of the customer service team, I absolutely apologise.
And I've had another one too with trying to find out, a land agent was trying to find out if a block of land could be used for market gardening in Gordonton, if that would require a consent to change. And like, it was just, in the end I said, sorry, just send me to Brent. This is just too dramaful, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
No, thank
Anyway,
you. Yeah, glad to know the issues and appreciate it.
yeah, thanks.
But I mean, it seems to me that if, as you said, Neville, the level of service through the process should be exactly the same, regardless of what your name is. If you want to, one of a better word, use your councillor authority or whatever you want to call it to get to the nub of something really quickly, then I think we should go through the directors. Then it's really clear then, and people know, because I think expecting every single staff member to know who we are is probably a little bit unrealistic. Yeah.
Look, I, personally, I think everybody should be treated equally. I don't believe there should be differentiation with council. Our standard of service should be our standard of service. It doesn't matter who you are or where you're ringing from. So sorry, Councillor Cookson, but I just think we should be aspiring to live operating at 100% rather than 95 or 90. And I don't expect any different treatment to anybody else if I want. So thank you. Emma, anything else?
I was just going to have a quick look at our innovation area. It is showing there that we have the 9 innovations that have come in over the period of November, December. And what's not shown there yet, but we have an additional 5 that we have had submitted in February, and so we'll look at those next time they come in. But that's really promising work that has come through.
Good.
And our Te Ao Māori focus area. Looking down at some of the progress, we have our Te Ao Māori L&D. It's obviously on the front, it's showing an average, so it looks like we haven't achieved it, but for the past 2 months, we are tracking above our target rate. So that those are the Te Ao Māori learning and development online courses that staff can do to sort of lift their cultural competency. And that's tracking towards the upcoming cultural competency survey that we have, which we've previously had a result of 55%, and we're hoping to then lift that, and with that lift our target as well. That is all I have.
So
Thank
does that suggest people are going to have to sit a test?
It's not a test, it's more of a survey that assesses staff's confidence and their assessment of their own capability to speak Te Ao Māori, to maybe write Te Ao Māorian greetings, say their pepeha.
Okay. Thanks very much. Any other questions for Emma? If not, the resolution is, it's not up on the screen, but I'll read it to you. Just moved it. Thanks, Mikhail. All in favour? Yes, carried. Thank you. Thanks, Neville.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. welcome our Chief Executive into the room. Plenty of room at the table if you want, Chris. Right, next agenda items, report to Finance Service Committee, decision required. The financial performance monitoring second quarter forecast to 31 December 2023. Janine, you're in charge.
May. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is our normal report in terms of our quarterly financial performance, as well as the results or outcome from the second quarter forecast that staff have undertaken based on the results to the 31st of December. So as noted there, overall from an operating position, we are currently sitting favourable to the full year forecast. I do note that there is still some work that is needed to ensure that we've actually got our budget phasing correct in the system. So there are a number of changes that will be reflected once staff are putting through the second quarter forecast, just to make sure that we've got that budget phasing aligned with when we expect work to be completed. A couple of call outs in terms of our performance in paragraphs 7 and 8. So around revenue, noting our investment fund performance, and the results are only in here to the end of December, being unfavourable at that point in time. Also revenue from council's regulatory activities being about 1.3 million behind, and fair revenue recoveries associated with public transport. We'll hear, I guess, about the investment fund performance when John Horrell from Macau Investments presents to the committee later this morning. And certainly since November, we've seen markets take a bit of a turn compared to what is reported here. In relation to council's regulatory activities, so there's some work being undertaken to review how we're tracking with our billable revenue targets, making sure that we're up to date with all of our timesheets to be able to recognise that revenue and so on. In terms of fair revenue recoveries, this is really offset by reduced expenditure, as well as changes between the mix of funding with central government Waka Kotahi funding and recoveries from fair revenue. So from a net position, that's looking good. In terms of the infrastructure capital, just noting $3.4 million spent to date in the first 6 months of the year, noting that our peak construction period is really over that October to April period. So we'd expect to see the expenditure ramping up right about now. In terms of the second quarter forecast, just noting there that we're forecasting an increase in retained earnings of just over 460,000, and that position offers an offset to the decrease in retained earnings that we'd reported through the first quarter forecast, but still just slightly shy of our annual plan, but pretty much on budget with the 66,000 unfavourable position. We've also obviously have the prior year surplus funds that council has had available of 3.9 million, but noting that just over 3.7 million of those funds have been proposed to be utilised through the 24-34 long-term plan based on decisions by council earlier this month. Paragraph 12 just calls out the main changes in terms of the outcome from that second quarter forecast. Some of these are just around the timing of payments, such as the drawdowns from the Regional Development Fund tied to existing funding deeds, so those being deferred until next year. Likewise, the final payment in relation to the Waikato Regional Theatre deferred until next year. And one capital program there, the Kerikeri Stop Bank upgrade, being proposed to be deferred until next year as well. So those are some of the key movements that are reflected within the forecast. Happy to take any questions, Mr. Chair.
Thanks for that report, Janine. Well, I'd just like to say thank you to the team responsible. They've delivered an excellent result to the end of December, and I hope not too much of it's going to be phased or as timing differences which are going to fall into the second half of the year. But I'd like to just thank and congratulate the team for the result that they've delivered to date. And it suggests that we could have actually struck a lower rate, but I'll reserve that judgment until we get to the end of the year. So thanks to Janine and Chris for that's a very good report. So is any other question, any other observations that people would like to make? I don't personally have any questions on it. Not. We have a resolution that's up on the board there. Have a mover. Thank you, Stu. Seconder. Nobody wants to see it. Thank you, Pamela. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. I just hope our next meeting has similarly positive results.
So do I, Mr. Chair.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. That reflects well on everybody. Reflects well on everybody. Okay, so the second quarter non-financial performance results. So we're talking to Haven. You'd like to speak to your report, please?
Morning, councillors. Morning, Chair. So yes, this is the second quarter non-financial performance measure results. As you can see there in the report, of the 51 performance measures in the LTP, there's no result for 10 as we're still awaiting data. And then of the remaining 41 measures, 33 are on track, 2 are to be monitored, 2 are off track, and 4 are not achieved. So of the, there's 2 called out there in the report, the results that are off track and forecast to not be achieved. The first one being the rolling annual average net promoter score. Sorry, that's the second one, but the one before that is the bus stops being on time in accordance with the timetable. I just wanted to comment on that one. The result is 68.95%, but we've been trending upward over the last few years. So I just wanted to mention that we are improving in that area. And then the next one there around the average net promoter score is one where we often get pulled down by the way that the score is weighted as well. And I think we've spoken about that at previous meetings. So just wanted to make those 2 comments and then open up for any other questions or discussion points.
Thanks, Haven. Anybody have any questions for Haven? I find it discouraging that we get penalised for the poor performance of the buses. This is the timetable. City Council are doing their best to slow the buses down and everybody else down on the road. So I'm not sure why we should be punished for that. But I guess that's the way it is. Yeah, and can you tell me how that data is captured?
Yeah, so it is largely the operators and working with the operators to make sure they might make the times as you've outlined. So just do our best with what we can manage in that space. In terms of how the data is collected, I believe there's a GPS tracking in the buses themselves, and there's some work being done to see if we can improve that over the next cycle, is my understanding.
Through the chair, I understand there are from time to time issues with that GPS tracking dropping so that we actually lose tracking of the bus and being able to time it at the various stops, which I guess is actually nobody's fault, but it is one of the features of that system. But I think if you went over to the Transport Centre, you would see a map that shows all of the buses moving around the city in particular, and whether they are on time, on schedule or delayed. So there's real-time tracking of all that occurs as well.
I understand there's GPSs on the bus, which will give you a monitoring, but it's actually, unless there's a unit at the bus stop which connects with that GPS, then it's going to be pretty hard to get accurate information on that. Yeah, I personally don't subscribe to the view that we should be beating ourselves up for something over which we've got no control. Just that, I question the value of the measure, to be honest, but it's there, and I guess we accept it. Anybody, Mikhail?
Mr. Chairman, thanks. Hayden, so the targets, who is that nationally set, the targets that are in there?
Or the buses
Yeah,
specifically?
well, just for most of the targets in there, was it staff
That's-
driven the targets?
that-
You set the target and that's what you'd like to hit?
Correct, yeah,
Yeah.
the staff set the targets and we're working through that process now for the long-term plan, looking at the next set.
Just through you, Mr. Chair, I was just going to make a comment on that. We do it to ourselves, largely. I think that
Why?
we set ourselves lofty targets, and we think that, having an aspirational target is a good idea. And I suppose with buses, we can try and hold the bus contractors to account, saying that we're publicly, reporting them. But of course, it bites us in the foot when we go and say how well we've performed. And it is something that we, have to be very conscious of. When we set these targets, that they're not too aspirational and that they're realistic. But I think it is something that we have obviously tried to want to achieve. And Janine, you might recall that target been there for some time,
Yes, I think it has been.
but we do it to ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Story.
Kia ora. Just a question on the no results is available are available for 10 of the measures as we are still awaiting data. What's preventing us from having that data? Is that a timing thing? Is it a systems thing?
I believe it's normally just a timing thing. So for example, one of them is 1.4 long-term plan. We haven't got to the point there where we can give a result. So it's often a timing thing.
So that timing is that we know that we've achieved the measure at the end of the financial year, but it's sort of when we get to June, there might be a survey that's programmed to be undertaken, but in the last quarter or something like that. Can I just make a quick comment though, while that, just the example of, I guess, the long-term plan unmodified audit measure is being talked about. We did have the opportunity to have a catch up with our audit director beginning of last week, just around that. They have, and so starting to get some insight, the team have actually started on the audit this week in terms of the audit of underlying documents for the long-term plan, and then following the council meeting next week, they will start the audit of the consultation document. One of the things that they look at around the giving of their opinion is our delivery of our capital works program. And they will look to see that we have achieved 80% of that capital works program over the last few years. At the moment, we're not meeting that target. And so we'll need to do some work with the auditors to explain some of the reasons for that variability. Otherwise, that does put at risk I guess, the achievement of an unmodified audit opinion in relation to the LTP.
Thanks, Janine. Batting order here. Stu, we'll go first, then Mikhail. Sorry, Pamela, you.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I'm pretty sure I was out for 5 seconds. Did you talk about the natural heritage one?
No, we haven't. I was just going to ask the question.
Oh, okay. If I've read that properly, to pass it, we've got to have 65 community groups we're working with. I mean, this doesn't make sense because we might have 20 big groups doing the same amount of work as 50 small ones. So I think we need to have a look at that. And it's also connected if the council decides that it doesn't want to put as much money in through the LTP process, and that's clearly going to skew it as well. So to me, that's definitely one we should go back and have a look at because we're just sort of shooting ourselves effectively.
Yeah. So through the chair, just to realise that, so these measures, this year's the last year that we will report on these measures as they're presented.
Yeah.
All of the performance measures have been reviewed through the long-term plan. I'm not sure, Haven, whether we've still got a measure around that's similar to that. Obviously, what we have tried to do is to align our measures with where council is putting in some new investment so that we can actually be held accountable for the outcomes of that new investment.
Just to confirm, yeah, we do have a similar measure next time, and given the budget and the potential increase in the NHPP and the policy review, the staff will revisit those targets again.
Yeah, there's got to be a way of doing it, even if it was percentage of budget fully allocated to projects that have delivered KPIs or something like that, but equally want to encourage council to keep working with these groups
Investing.
as well. So, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Mikhail?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just back onto the audit.
Mm.
Was that ever not reached before, or is it just because the last 3 years have been unusual to reach that 80% threshold? Have we not reached that before in the previous 3-year term?
So through the chair, I think I've gone back over about the last 5 years to see how we've been doing. There have been things such as COVID, which has obviously impacted our ability to get out there and do work. And then over the last 3 years, we've obviously been operating under an enhanced shovel ready program as well. But there's sort of a maximum level that we seem to be able to achieve, I think, in terms of our capital works delivery. At the moment, that is probably below the 80% that we've got forecast in. So we need to be able to explain it in terms of why we think we've got the capital works program correct moving forward.
If I could comment through, Mr. Chair. And you might recall Councillor Downard have said that we want to have a look at that capital delivery program and if necessary come back and do a variation to the LTP in the future, because we've got a new infrastructure strategy that we want to sort of put into it. We need to make sure that what we can do is realistic and is affordable for communities going forward, because the cumulative impact of some of these programs could mean in the future there's quite a lot of repayment needed. So we do want to review that whole program of work to make sure it is achievable and affordable, and that'll have to balance off the what might be required if we want to keep the same level of protection in some communities.
Thanks very much. Yeah, if there's no further questions, there's a resolution on the board. Mikhail, thank you. Stu seconded. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Haven. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
your report. Appreciate that. John, I'd like to welcome you to the meeting. Sorry, should have come up and welcomed you earlier on, but we're in the middle of discussion. So, John, I invite you to take a seat at the end of the table and present your report on the investment fund performance. I think everybody in the room's met John from previous meetings. So, yeah. As it turns out, John, your timing was to perfection, right on time.
Thank you for that was fortunate with timing. I was actually planning to arrive a little bit later. So look, in terms of the discussion today, we'd like to quickly run through that performance report that I take it you have in front of you. I guess just to start the conversation here, I'd like to sort of articulate why this report is important for the council. Clearly, this is the way to monitor and hold parties accountable for the management of the investment portfolio. That includes the investment managers. It obviously includes ourselves as your investment advisor as well. Would like to acknowledge the input from prior investment consultant, Marissa. They were very forthcoming with information and professional during that handover. I think that's worth acknowledging because the benefit is obviously to the council. You now have a long-term track record here that we can continue to tack on to as the portfolio moves forward. The plan was to quickly run through the report and do a bit of a page turn, because I appreciate this is a new document. It is slightly different in terms of the layout. So if that's okay, I'll proceed with that.
Yes, thank you.
So jumping straight on to page 1 here, rather than what previously in your prior reporting, this used to be at the back of the pack, which articulates the reserving framework. For us, this is front and centre. We consider this the primary objective, really, to maintain the strategy over time. So what does this, I guess, page outline? This is the long-term objective, currently set at inflation plus 3%. and you've got your initial capital base, which was an amount some time ago adjusted for inflation, and what we don't currently see, but hopefully at some point in the future, an excess reserve above that. So this is a continuation of that reserving framework, and for the most part, what we believe the primary objective here.
Can I just make an observation there? Is it intended that you've put extend this out over a 10-year period, which is the term of the long-term plan, so we can actually see where the projections are for the balances, and then you'll put the actuals in against that? It's just my mind. I like to see things where we're going.
No, thank you. I'm happy you mentioned that actually, because this does look a little blank at the moment, this page. And you are right that once we undertake the next stage, which I'll touch on at the end of this presentation, the undertaker asset allocation modelling, you will see on this page the distributional outcomes, expectations from the investment portfolio, and that is a great way to hold us accountable, I guess, is if over the long term portfolio is performing.
Excellent, thank you.
I'm going to walk through this a little bit slower, just for the interest of the council, given there are some new information here, but generally speaking, we'll be speaking to going forward what occurred over the quarter. Just want to touch on that next page. So page 2 I'm referring to now. We've included some new information here. So in terms of what you were previously receiving from a performance reporting perspective, that is all replicated and that is contained within this report. There is some additional information which the council now has available. That includes the change in assets. This is from the date we were appointed or from the date we took over the performance reporting at the end of September 2023, and that will be added to over time. The reason why this is important is clearly there's a number of different ways why the value of the investment portfolio can change over time. Yes, that can come from investment gains, which was the case for the quarter, a gain of approximately $5 million. But cash outflows obviously deduct from that. So the net out cash flow there of around $2 million was redeemed from the portfolio. We even account for rebates. So you can see a small rebate amount coming through from your fee agreements with the underlying investment managers. The table below that, so we're now referring to the asset class breakdown. This is monitoring the rebalancing of the portfolio first and foremost. So you've got the actual breakdown per asset class of the investment portfolio there, the current weights as a function of that, and the strategic asset allocation or the target weight to each of those asset classes. The difference and therefore the allowable range will always prompt some comment there with regards to rebalancing of the investment portfolio. That wasn't the case for the end of the quarter, Q4 2023. Jumping forward to page 3 now, again, just talking through each of these tables, given they are new. Our attribution here of the portfolio includes a few more numbers than possibly you were used to previously. Essentially, we take the gross return, so the return before fees are deducted. Fees are deducted to arrive at the net return. That net return is compared relative to the benchmark, so the underlying weighted average benchmarks from your investment managers, or in other words, your sort of SAA weighted benchmark there. That excess is calculated, but importantly, we also compare that to the target. So the target of inflation plus 3% is also reported on. That gives you the chart to the right there with regards to your gross return, net return, benchmark, and target, all being hopefully transparent there. I guess I would take the opportunity to comment that obviously over the last 3 years, with inflation being extremely high, it's proven to be a difficult time for the investment portfolio to achieve its target. However, over the last quarter, playing some catch up of that. The table below, and again, this will be a continuation as we flick through this report, is another layer deeper of information. This attribution analysis has been added. This is new information for the council. But essentially, there are 2 primary ways to outperform the benchmark. One is, of course, the outperformance of the underlying investment managers, particularly those that actively manage their mandates. But you can also outperform the benchmark by being over or underweight your target asset allocation, or the SAA. So we attribute the difference there. We wouldn't expect the asset allocation effect here to ever be significant, but for the council, I guess, to understand the key drivers of performance relative to the benchmark, we are splitting out now the impact that comes from asset allocation and the impact that comes from security selection, or think of that as the underlying investment managers. Moving on to the next page, and this is sort of going down another layer into the performance reporting. We present the asset classes here. So in some cases, there is just the one manager managing an asset class, for example, where there are two managers or multiple investment products. Those are aggregated into the performance here. I guess in terms of comments at this level, clearly the key driver has been global equities over the last quarter, performing net of fees close to 9% there. Some outperformance coming through from the underlying investment managers there of 1.6%. So contributing to that strong outcome that I mentioned before for the quarter. Moving on to page 5 now, we're now down into the individual managers, and you will see here, this is all, again, just to reiterate, this is all populated with the prior performance that was provided by Mercer. In terms of comments with regards to these managers, on this page, it does actually contain some of the more influential managers in terms of investment outcomes for the quarter. That would include Stewart Investors, reversing some of their more recent underperformance due to headwinds, and I guess at a high level here, the ESG or sustainable investing. So performing strongly in the third quarter, which was good to see. And First Sentier for global listed infrastructure, I guess noting that the listed infrastructure sector performed extremely well, with a benchmark return there of over 10%. They actually added an extra 2.8% on top of that for the quarter. So a really strong quarter for First Sentier, and there's some comments there with regards to some of the underlying key drivers. On the final page here, page 6, articulate the fixed income investment managers, a little bit more muted performance there relative to the benchmark, not contributing heavily to that outperformance that we saw for the quarter. That was a very quick run through of the report. I appreciate there might be a lot of questions with regards to the information I've just presented. So I'd open up for questions at this point in time.
John, thanks very much, and I'd like to just compliment you on the clarity of the report. It's very clear, concise, and I think for people who are not familiar with reading these, it highlights the comparisons and the returns. Just a couple of observations. I'd like through Janine or yourself, I don't know, but to pass our thanks on to Mercer for their assistance given to Macau on that handover process. It certainly made things a lot easier and gives you that historical data, which would have been otherwise more difficult to capture. I'd also like to just highlight this. Your report is actually to the 31st of December, whereas our financial reporting has picked up the data to the 30th of November. Is that correct? And and performance during that last month of the year was quite outstanding. So that will make a difference when our next quarterly report comes out. Clients.
Yeah.
And the other obvious thing, which may or may not be obvious to everyone, is that these results are under the current SIPO settings, that the portfolio hasn't been adjusted to the new SIPO settings, which will happen as from the 1st of July. Is that correct? 1st of July? Yeah. So, all right. So I don't have any questions. I'd just like to say thanks for your report, John, and taking the time to come all the way down here to the traffic to present it to us.
Mr. Chair, I guess that comment around the timing of the SIPO review is maybe a good segue for John. We talked about sort of trying to lay out where next. I guess we've done the transition in terms of strategic advisor, but there's still a program of work that we need to do with the committee to actually effectively implement the new strategy that was landed on and that we've reflected through our LTP. So maybe, yeah, John, just to step through that would be great.
Yeah, so in terms of next steps, as the council may recall, we sort of fast-tracked our initial sort of onboarding process that we usually undertake when working with new clients. That was to agree the overall risk profile for the purpose of budgeting this coming financial year. In terms of next steps, there has been, I guess, agreement in terms of the path forward there. The next step would be for us to put together formal advice with regards to that asset allocation, so the mix of assets within the chosen risk profile. And then the point or the step following that would be a more strategic review of the underlying investment managers. I should mention at this point in time that there's no immediate concerns with regards to any of the investment managers. Clearly, we would be mentioning that right now if that was an issue, but there may be room for potential improvements over time. But first and foremost, the next step would be very much agreeing the strategic asset allocation, which we'll be preparing our advice on.
So thanks. So if there's, I don't want our committee meeting dates to stand in the way of progress in terms of the transition. So if there's anything that needs to be done, that expectations from us in terms of giving approvals, then I'll let you ask you to liaise with Janine, please. And if we have to call a special meeting of the committee, then so be it, because I don't want to slow the process down because of our timetables. Does that make sense or not?
Understood. Yes, we can take that offline. Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions of John while he's here? Room? If not, we've got a resolution. It's up on the board, up on the screen for you. Thanks, Mikhail and Stu, seconded it. Those in favour? Carried. Thanks, John. Thank you for your time and effort. I'll let you, unless you want us to join us for lunch, you're very welcome. But yeah, if I can understand if you want to head back to Auckland.
Thank you. I'm sure you've got a lot on your plate, so I'll get moving. But I appreciate the offer again. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. All right. Okay. The next agenda item is Treasury Management and Monitoring Report to 31 December. Going for time. Yeah, no, we're fine. So Janine?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the staff report in terms of the Treasury Management function from an investment fund perspective. This is obviously just reflecting the information that Macau have provided us through their report. But in addition to that, reporting around our working capital funds management, as well as council's own borrowing program as well. I'd probably just call out in terms of the borrowing program in particular of seeing the reduction and where we are tracking with that. I think we currently have $30 million of borrowing in place as at the 31st of December, based on the current forecast. That's only projected to increase to 39 million by the end of this financial year. That will be impacted by things that we've seen through the forecast around some of those regional theatre loan repayments. But as you'll be aware, the big determinant of our borrowing program is associated with that infrastructure capital works program. So once we get to our third quarter results and we have another look at how we're tracking with those programs and what we expect to be able to complete this year versus what may shift out to next year, we will again be revising our forecast borrowings for the period as well. In terms of cash on hand, so the balances were slightly higher as at the 30th of December than I probably like to see them. But the team have been working through another schedule of placements of those working capital funds as well. It's always a nice way to earn a little bit of revenue if we can work that sort of term deposit call account investment balance carefully to match to our cash flow. But other than those points, happy to take any questions on that report.
Thanks, Janine. So once again, positive indicators on all metrics, which I guess is a reflection of the performance of the council by spending less money than what we budgeted. So it's good to see that it's flowing through to the cash position. Thank you. Has anybody got any questions for Janine? If not, I'd like to ask for a move for the resolution, please. Sorry, I seem to be rushing through this, but thanks, Stu. Pamela, all in favour? Right, thank you. Carried. Right, Port Finance Service Committee. I'm going to do this, Linda.
Yes, I will do this. Linda.
People happy just to carry on for now? Okay, thank you.
We've only got another couple of reports to go. So this is just the update in terms of our rates collection performance, but to the 31st of January rather than the quarter end. At that point in time, in terms of our current year rates collection, we had collected 87%, pretty much in line with, but slightly ahead of the prior year's collection for the same period of 86%. In terms of our rates arrears, slightly behind on a comparative perspective, but really, I think, within quite reasonable margins. So 6% value of arrears outside of the current year's rates compared to 4% for the same period. It's fair to say that along with a number of areas of finance, the rates team have completed a number of firsts in terms of their use of the new Infor solution, and with all of those key processes in terms of rates invoices and a couple of penalty runs under their belt, they will be starting to turn their attention to debt follow-up ahead of the next year's rates assessment. So they'll be doing that as well as sort of general account maintenance to keep on top of those outstanding payments, communicating, reminding ratepayers where relevant that payments are still due. But just happy to take any questions on the report. Take it as read.
Thanks, Janine. One item which I'm not sure, we're happy to listen to other people, but what I'd like to see is a graph which charts our actual billed rates over the last 10 years, so we can see what the trend is. See where and maybe that could be maybe 5 years past and 5 years projected in the long-term plan. Up to you. Does anybody else see any value in that? Just in terms of seeing what the rates actually invoiced out are as a trend?
You mean?
Yes, yeah. At the moment, we're being told what it is for this year. We've got no comparative with last year, the year before. I like to look at trends. If it's just me, then we'll forget about it.
I think that's quite easy.
Through the chair, it's easy enough to do because we're reporting the information every year in the same format. So I'm happy to pull that out. I'm just wondering, is there an overlay of that in terms of the collection that you're wanting to see as well? Because I guess there's the setting of the rates, which is sort of the budgeting process, really, given coming to life. And then, maybe it's where we sit in terms of current year and arrears collection at the 30th of June for every year. So we can see, are we holding the line from a collection perspective? Are we losing ground?
Data.
We've got it in the commentary. And there have previously we provided different graphs, and so happy to take the committee's feedback on exactly this point of additional information. We've tried to look at things in terms of on a territorial authority area of looking at the unpaid rates to see are there any particular hotspots or concerns in terms of what the team are hearing when they're getting inquiries from ratepayers. Normally that would be brought to my attention, and I'm not aware of anything in terms of particular points, but happy to start in terms of that, the rates collection and our outstandings as a starting point. And if that's useful and there's more information that we can layer in here, happy to do that over time as well.
Thanks, Jean. Look, I don't want to create work where it's not necessary, so it's only if fellow committee members believe that's going to be useful to us.
Look, I'm worried about it. To me, it's only useful if there's a little bit of a narrative with each, if you're going to look back and say, why was it this then and that the other time? We need a bit of a narrative around that's possibly where the work is, but I don't know whether that's the narrative we provide in the annual reports, I suppose, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But I'm just seeing as being available to members of the committee as we progress through the year.
Yeah.
It is, as you're quite right, it's in the annual report anyway.
Yeah.
I'll have a think and a play around with some formats that we can look at, and maybe it's within the current year, sort of breaking those collection stats down to the quarterly performance, so you can see how we, if we've got 30th of June for the years completed, and then for the current year, the quarters, you can see if we're actually trending the right way towards our historical performance.
Okay, so thanks. Do you have any other questions? If not, resolution rates information to 31 January be received.
Yeah.
Thanks, Stu. Seconder. Thanks, Mikhail. All those in favour? Against? Carried. All right, thank you. Thanks, Janine, for that report. Next agenda item is the report to Finance Service Committee on the Councillor, Chief Executive and Director expense for the quarter ended 31 December. It's been circulated.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sort of, I'm happy to take this report as read. This is just one of the reports we provide for transparency in terms of across Councillor, Chief Executive and Director expenses for the quarter as well as year to date.
Don't have any particular points. Emily, you've got a point to raise?
Yeah, just raising on page 68, and then it's echoed on 69. Just I note a personal training amount that's attributed to me, and the reason, and I know I raised this with you, Mr. Chair, and you said, "Are we going to spend a lot of time on $200?" That's not really the point. It's that there's a training expense when there wasn't training expenditure, and it's noted against an item that isn't associated with training. And so the reason that I raised it is just some concern around how these reports are generated and the information that goes into it, because of course we're making governance decisions on the reports that are put before us, Mr. Chair, and we want to ensure that they are accurate. So that's my only comment.
Okay. Thank you for that, and if we can pass that across to Janine to follow up at appropriate time, thanks.
Yes, I certainly will, and I'll follow up on that point in particular. I guess the financial controller who prepares this report is looking at the information that we have in the financial system and then tracking that back with expense claims. But I'll use that as an example just to check that we've got our processes smooth for making sure we've got things sitting. The information is correct and it's sitting in the right category in terms of particularly where we're highlighting it or calling it out.
You may have well had some training that you didn't realise you had. Councillor, sorry.
Be more skilled than I thought I was.
I'm sure you do. Stu.
There's just one. What causes the differentiation in the telecommunications one? That was something that confused me.
The variations.
I thought we get given a phone if we want to do a bit of personal texting. We pay $5 a month.
I've got my own personal phone, so I don't have a council phone. So I think that's what the variation will be. So I get reimbursed for my phone, whereas I've used my own phone.
So it's not true reporting then, because potentially the fact that the council provides me with it, I don't know what the cost is, but it's kind of making it look like yours is significantly higher than mine, for example.
Yep.
But it may well not be. In fact, it could be the other way around because of the way it's been reported.
Yeah, so I think this is the reporting of, I guess, those payments to elected members or costs incurred. But yeah, I get the point.
Because the whole point of this is so careful with
Yeah.
their money, not giving them a true picture, saying that Chris is
Yeah,
being
and-
grumpy and I'm being careful, which is actually not the case, yeah.
Thank
You know what I mean?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
It's-
I
and
think
it
it's
is
being
a-
able to compare apples with apples.
It's a
Yeah.
valid point, but
Yeah.
these are payments, as I understand them, made on behalf of or to councillors. Whereas your payment is being made to a third party, being the service provider who provides the phone.
Yeah,
Capturing
but
the
it's
data
still,
could be
yeah, but it's
time
still a
consuming.
cost to council for the provision of that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
As long
Uh,
as the
because
cost
there's-
of doing that doesn't outweigh the benefit.
Yeah,
That's what I'm hearing.
Right.
Right.
So, my understanding of that telecommunications, it's reflective of provision for internet and alongside the cell phones. And so there's a few different components to it. And different counselors have different telecommunication arrangements around how their internet is provided at home, how their phone is provided at home. So, but I do think that there is some validity in if this is so that we can remain transparent to our ratepayers, I think there's some validity to some narrative that surrounds what is collected or what is reflected in each of the categories.
Thank you for that feedback. We'll dig into some of those items just to make sure that we are fairly reflecting the total cost to council on a,
And look, if the cost of trying to be as transparent as we should be is getting silly, just a couple of explaining why the difference is probably all you need,
Just yeah, exactly. Just asterisks beside the ones that are self-provided. Okay, thank you. So we have a resolution. Is there any other questions? Not, I'll move this resolution. I'll second it. Thank you. All those in favour? Against? Carried. The next agenda item is the tenders board. What?
thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is to provide again that transparency for the committee around those contracts that have been awarded by the tenders board, which is made up of members of the executive leadership team, approving contracts that have a value that exceeds our individual delegations of 250,000. Obviously, contracts that are of a net value to council of more than $2 million and are multi-year in nature, you will actually see coming through this committee as the final approval step. So none of these have triggered that level, but just so that we are being fully transparent around our procurement processes and decisions, this is one of those standard reports that we provide for you.
Thank you, Janine. Just, I'm not sure whether somebody can answer the question, but the item for Kingfish Group for Waikato Wellbeing Project, can somebody explain why are we spending so much money on that? It seems a lot of money.
Yeah, so I can probably respond to that. So that contract is in relation to the Waikato Wellbeing Project, and I think the Executive Director, I think that's his title, his contract for services. Council is really the administrating agency for the funding for that project, which is why the contract has run through our process, but it is at no cost to council. So it's not our funds that we're actually spending.
So do we have any responsibility for the level of funds that are being spent? Who administers that? Who's got oversight of that, making sure that due probity has been applied to the contract?
So in terms of that project, that contract, that's why it's actually come through our process. The level of delegation means that it has been reviewed by the tenders board and approved on that basis.
So is that a regional council approval or an external approval?
It's approval under our procurement practices, but it's not. So like I say, the contract is held with us for that, the executive director, but the funding is from an external party and we administer that on their behalf.
So we don't have any accountability for the quantum of the contract.
No,
That's what
that's
you're
right.
saying. Right, thank you. I guess the same can be said for the future proof. Is that a similar
yeah.
situation? And the other one, which Robbie's probably interested in, is the foreshore east and west stop bank renewal earthworks. Which is, yeah, it's not a significant cost, but I think that's the one that you thought there was some lack of oversight on, Robbie, initially. Mangan.
It's got issues with drawing material and most probably last year's weather conditions.
So that's
The drying of materials. Yeah, and this one, just looking at the comment, and Councillor Cookson, you're probably well across the issues in terms of protecting access to the Hauraki rail trails over that summer period and the costs associated with that and health and safety requirements. There were to be discussions with Hauraki District Council in terms of cost sharing in relation to those.
So can I, Robbie, is this in your knowledge of the project, is this reasonable given what you believe to be an issue with the contractor rather than the project itself? I understand your comments.
Well, what I understand is because of the weather conditions of last year, the contractor had to cease the work that was being done. And then it was deferred. And then because we deferred the contract, then that would be renegotiated or what it would cost on top of last year's job, because fuel and everything has gone up most probably since then and everything else. So it's just a part of the place we're living in, I suppose. It's not.
Yeah, so if I can clarify, this contract variation or the addendum is probably part of the consequence of that, the timing of the work and when that's been able to be completed, which meant that over the peak period for the Hauraki rail trails being utilised, the works haven't been completed. So special provision has had to be made.
There's been there's been road altercations of where they can ride the rail trail to get around where we've been working.
To navigate.
That's a part of the cost of
navigate it safely. So that's specifically what that contract.
And then there's been a bit of legal costs of who's going to pay for it, because it was never written in the deed very clearly who the costs laid with, and it's been a headache.
I guess, Robbie, my question is, are you comfortable with that variation? I guess there's not much we can do about it.
There's nothing we can do about it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, we have a resolution. Indus Board of Water Contracts, 1 October, 31 December. Move it, please. Thank you, Stu, Pamela. All in favour? Against? Carried. That seems to be the end of the agenda, believe it or not. Unless anybody's got any extra business I'd like to put on the table, which would probably be unconstitutional. So I'd like to ask Janine to say the carrick here before we close the meeting, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Una here mai te uru tapanui, kia wātia, kia māma, te nākau, te tinana, te hininaro, e te ara takatū, kua rā e rongo, e whakare ake ki runga, kia tīna, omie, huie, kai kie.
Thank you, Janine. I officially call the meeting closed now at time we've got 10:44. And thank you all for your attendance. Thanks, Janine. That was good. So you're good on my day now.